Thank you. Welcome to Governance and Resources, Wednesday, 4th of December 2024. Oh, 5th even, sorry. I'm reading it wrong. Welcome one and all. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Bond, Councillor G and Councillor Hughes. Substituting is Councillor Hobson and Councillor Chapman.
Thank you very much. And on to item number 2, approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Do I have any? Thank you, Councillor Bates.
Most Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder at all? Thank you, Councillor Shelley. Everyone for, please. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. And
excuse me, Chair. Could I have a sort of explanation about voting on minutes? You don't actually have to have attended the meeting to vote on approval of the minutes, do you?
no, but then that's obviously why the two members have decided to abstain. Because
no, I didn't abstain.
Oh, okay.
I voted because I read the minutes.
Yeah. But that's it. If they feel that they don't feel that they don't feel that they're up to understanding what the minutes are, then they can vote to abstain. Which obviously you can obviously vote for still. Yes. Yeah,
but I was just probably newer members may be under the impression that if you didn't attend the meeting, you couldn't vote on the minutes.
No, thank you. Noted. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Point of order. Sorry, and was that counter, by the way? Thank you very much. Carried. On to item number 3, public participation. I do have a response from Catherine Almashur, and I'll read it out. Have had a quick look through, this is with regards to item number 12, the Complaints Annual Report. I've had a quick look through and was interested to see that no complaints ever appear to be upheld. Also, none of the complaints raised about the travellers appear on there, but I assume this is because of the dates and the fact that we were unaware that we had to emblazon it with formal complaint. Thank you. Then move to item number 4, please. Interests? Any members' interests? No. And on to item number 5, questions pursuant to Rule of Procedure number 15. We have 2 put forward by Councillor Hobson. I'll answer them in order, or question them in order if you'd like me to. Go for it.
In light of the email to all councillors from Ashley Watts on the 28th of November 2024 in relation to the decarbonisation scheme at the Arc Leisure Centre, Matlock, and in the spirit of open and transparent governance, can the Chair of the Committee provide the following information to the meeting this evening? The exact amount of the money lost in this project, any future liabilities, and when and which officers and members first became concerned about lack of independent oversight and ability to meet timescales regarding this project.
Thank you, Councillor. And in response, this is a live situation currently at the moment, which will require a response from the funding body, SALIX, before the final position can be determined. As of today, both leisure centres, and this is the update, Arc and Wirksworth, have been withdrawn from the PSDS 3B funding round due to the significant increase in the District Council's required capital contribution to both schemes, and it was increased our financial risk that would be present. Under the funding regime, fees incurred to date can be recovered, and we're confident we will do that, as permitted expenditure, and an application for that will be submitted next week. Subject to confirmation of this, there is not expected to be any direct loss of money, and no future liabilities have been incurred. What has been lost, unfortunately, is the opportunity of the loss of funding and to draw down a portion of funding that is available at this time. This would not prevent future decarbonisation works taking place at a future grant submission. All PSDS schemes have been administered by the Climate Change and Biodiversity Officer and the Estates and Facilities Managers with technical consultant support. The current issue was initially identified by consultants on the 20th of November 24, and the following research was confirmed on the 26th of November 2024 and the 5th of December 2024. Whilst this position is unfortunate, the 3 PSDS schemes have successfully completed at Ashbourne Leisure Centre, Matlock, and Bakewell Agricultural Business Centre, and a 4th scheme is currently on site at Northwood Depot. A further update to all members will be provided once the final position is determined. Thank you.
Chair, could you just say which officers and members first, when they first became concerned and who they were? Have you got that information?
I don't have all of that information. This obviously came through from Ash and his team.
Could you get that information and email it to us?
Okay,
lovely.
not a problem.
I've got a supplementary. I'd like to thank Ashley for his report to members and his diligence in bringing it to our attention. It's a question that you can actually email me afterwards. How, in a spirit of sort of monitoring, how many formal meetings with officers have the chair and vice chair of this committee had, and will they present an informal brief report to each meeting for the information of councillors as to their chair and vice chair meetings they've attended, with just with a little bit of information about what they were about?
We'll get an update on the formality of what those meetings were for you, Councillor, yes, and
Thank you.
those regards. Thank you.
My second question is, we have seen members of the public and businesses address various council meetings complaining of getting no response from either their elected members or from Derbyshire Dales District Council departments. Is the Chair satisfied that this report accurately reflects how complaints are handled by this council? And you will see the letter from this representation from the lady at Matlock Bath.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So the District Council has an established complaints procedure which is clearly documented and explains on the Council's website. It is intended to deal with formal complaints to the District Council and is not intended to deal with individual service issues, requests for service, or to provide a forum for an ongoing dialogue in response to public consultations undertaken by the District Council. This report is therefore an accurate representation of formal complaints submitted and dealt with by the District Council.
Thank you. It's vitally important that the public have faith in this complaint system. Will the Chair and Vice Chair agree to look into how complaints are handled at the Council and report back as to the timescales of responses from councillors and officers from email from both members of the public and other councillors, and also specifically in relation to Matlock Bath, Moorledge and Roseley residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Council, as indicated in the report in the agenda, has an established complaints process, and the use of the complaints process demonstrates that it is properly administered, and this Council actually has much less complaints, in fact none upheld by the Ombudsman last year. So far as the specific nature of the supplementary goes, the demands occasioned by on-officer time by some senior elected members to encouraging an ill-conceived scattergun approach concerning traveller issues and encouraging the submission of a high volume of correspondence, including duplicate emails to a wide range of members, officers and generic departmental email addresses, is not an appropriate use of the complaints procedure. And so far as members are concerned, it is also potentially contrary to the Council's Members' Code of Conduct, which requires that members should ensure that public resources are used in accordance with Derbyshire Dales District Council's requirements and in the public interest.
I think my question was a timescale of responses for councillors to respond to emails when they've been contacted, and also members. Thank you.
She's answered the question.
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. On to item number, what have we got? Number 6. Fraud prosecution policy for council tax support scheme, please. Councillor Hobson, your microphone's still on, please. Thank you. Karen, are we? Sorry, you're all right. Thank you, Karen.
So this is a fairly straightforward item. I don't have a great deal to add to the report. It relates to the update of the fraud prosecution policy for council tax support. We've had the previous policy in place for several years, and I'm pleased to say that I can't remember ever having to use it. But we do need it in place in case we do identify an occasion of fraud, and it sets down what we need to do in the circumstances. There are 5 recommendations to this report that I've asking members to approve, including some delegated authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Remember, that's 5 recommendations when we do bring this forward. Does anyone have any questions on the paper? Doesn't appear to be anyone. Do I have any proposers at all?
Officer recommendation.
All 5 recommendations. Thank you very much, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Thank you. And I'll put that to the vote then. Everyone for them, please. That's unanimously carried. Thank you very much, everybody. On to move to the next item, which is debt recovery policy. Karen, once more to your good self. Thank you very much.
Again, an update of a policy. We hadn't actually reviewed the debt recovery policy since 2016, but it has worked well over the years, and you can see the changes that we've made summarised in paragraph. Paragraph 2.5. So essentially, they're fairly cosmetic, updating the council logo to a different style, changing job titles, and some other minor amendments. So this report has 3 recommendations that I'm asking members to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any questions from the floor at all? No? Do I have any proposers at all? Thank you, Councillor Shelley. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greatorex. All those for, please. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karen. And on to item number 8, the Internal Audit Progress Report 24-25, please. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my usual progress report. If you turn to Appendix 1 of the report, you can see that we've issued 6 reports this period, 4 with substantial assurance and 2 with reasonable assurance. So there are top categories where we're happy that there isn't much risk. If you look at the appendix, you can see at the time I submitted the report, we hadn't received a response to the land charges report, but we have received that now. The recommendations have been accepted and are being worked upon. We haven't identified any fraud. Appendix 2, that details the overall audit plan, the audits we've completed, those in progress, and those that we're potentially going to have to defer. We have made good progress on the plan so far this year. The reason we may have to defer a couple of audits is because one of the full-time auditors has gone on maternity leave and so is off for a period of time. We have considered whether to fill that post on a temporary basis, but overall we've decided at the moment the senior auditor is going to be able to plough ahead and complete enough of the plan for me to be able to provide an audit opinion at the end of the year, but we will keep that under review. The other thing that I just wanted to make the committee aware of this meeting was that there has been an introduction of some new global internal audit standards, and they do become applicable to the public sector from April 25. The Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy are still working on guidance as to where the global standards don't apply to the public sector. They produced a draft that's out for consultation, and they've also produced a draft code of practice for governance of internal audit. So once those consultations are complete, I will bring to the committee at the beginning of April a full copy of the global internal audit standards, the SIP for application note and the code of practice. So we are compliant with the public sector internal audit standards at the moment. So the bulk of those standards are still within the global internal audit standards, but there are some things we will need to work on to make us fully compliant. So at the moment, I'm producing an action plan, and I'll bring that in April as well, of the things that we need to do to make sure that we're fully compliant with the global internal audit standards. So the recommendation, Chair, is that the report be received and noted. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the forward look as well for the springtime next year. Do I have any questions from the floor? No? Do I have any?
Move the report be noted, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Do I have a seconder at all? Councillor Ripton, I'll second that. And all those for the report, please. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Jenny. On to item number 9, external audit in progress. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. So good evening all. We're presenting our external audit progress report for December for the year ended 31st of March 2024. You may remember in the committee meeting in October, we communicated to you that we expected bringing our audit completion report as well as our auditor's annual report, which also includes our conclusions on the Council's arrangements for value for money, to the January committee meeting. I'm pleased to report that that is still the plan and we're still on track to do so. I can also give you updates on some of the areas in the report that were marked at the time of issue as in progress or waiting for outstanding queries from the Council. For example, collection fund and provisions and contingencies are now completed and subject to our review procedures. We've also received answers to our queries on valuations of investment property and property, plant and equipment, and we're working through those. The review process, we expect that to go on well into January, and inevitably there will be some queries coming out of that, but nothing that should cause concern. So during the last meeting, we also discussed the so-called backstop arrangements, which is a national issue. The 13th of December is the backstop date for all for audited accounts to be published for all years up to and including 22-23. So that does not affect Derbyshire Dales, as Derbyshire Dales is up to date. The backstop date for the 23-24 accounts is 28th of February 2025. So that will give us plenty of time to meet that deadline when we present our report to the January committee meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the report or the external audit progress more generally.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the excellent work, keeping us all to schedule. That's all very good. I know it's been behind. Any questions from the floor at all? Cool. Thank you very much. Do I have anyone proposing it? Oh, Councillor Butler, have you got a query?
Can I just come back to the Procurement Act? Sorry. The Procurement Act, we're on track with that.
I thought you might ask me a question on that. So as that's outside the scope of the audit, I wouldn't want to give an opinion on that, but I'm happy to take any questions away and pass that back to our team.
Right, we'll contact you later.
Okay.
Contact you later. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do I have any proposals for that? Councillor Ripton. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gretches. Thank you very much. And do I all have those voting for, please? Thank you very much. Unanimous again. Thank you very much, everyone. And on to item number 10, fees and charges for the financial year 25-26. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual report where we bring fees and charges to this committee to be approved for the following financial year. In the past, we've brought this report in January or February, but we decided to bring it earlier this year to give officers more time to plan for the change in fees, but also so that we can build the impact of the new fees into the draft budget that's currently being prepared for 25-26. So the report in the whole recommends fee increases of around 3%, which is just above the current rate of inflation, which was at 2.3% to October 2024. In most cases, the fees that have come out of that calculation have been rounded either to the nearest pound, 50 pence or 10 pence, to make it easier for customers and staff. The report does explain in part 2 any deviations from the 3%. In some cases, it's suggested fees be frozen, for example, the public convenience charge of 20 pence. And in other cases, fees are being proposed to increase by more than 3%. I'd particularly like to explain to you the situation with stall market rents, which are proposed to go up by 10%. That's come about because the latest guidance that we've received from our VAT advisors is that we now need to charge VAT on stall market rents, except for the spots occupied by vehicles where effectively the stallholder provides their own stall. So we've had to charge VAT, but the events manager didn't feel it was appropriate to pass on the full 20% to the market traders. So he's recommending a 10% increase to share the burden for the time being, because he felt if we increased it by 20%, we'd lose more market traders, and the stall market already is not fully occupied. So that does effectively mean that the council is actually going to receive less income after accounting for VAT for 25-26 than it did for 2024-25. At the request of Councillor Shelley, I have prepared a document which is on your tables to show the estimated income that we generate from each of the sets of fees. So essentially, there's more or less a row for each service or part of service. You can see for Bakewell Store Market in 2024-25, we were estimating to receive £140,000 of income. That will go down in 25-26 to £136,000. But the traders will actually be paying 10% more because of the VAT situation. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And just to remind everyone before we get into the minutiae of these ones, whilst Karen's got the high-level report on these, quite often, like with the car park reviews that have been taken out of here, you're probably going to have to take that back to those departments to actually push a big change in there. Sorry, Councillor Hobson first.
Thank you, Karen. Just a couple of ones. You've explained very well about the Bakewell Store Market, but I still do have concerns about those traders. You know, it's the first people taking a punt at a business. You know, Bakewell's been a very successful market, but Councillor Butcher's nodding. You know, we do have some empty stores, so I do have a few concerns about putting up 10%. My main concern, though, is the garden waste, because we had the council meeting, and is it correct we made £90,000 profit on the garden waste? Am I right?
Well, I'm not sure that's a profit. I think that was more income than we expected. For 24-25, as you recall, this time last year, or a bit later, we increased the fee from £50 to £56, a 20% increase. And officers were of the opinion that that could actually result in a loss of income, because a lot of people might say that the price increase put them off renewing their subscription. So although we put the price increase up, when we calculated the budget, we built in a reduction for a fall in the number of subscriptions. What's actually happened is the number of subscriptions has continued to rise. We didn't see that fall. So a combination of higher subscriptions and a higher price means that we're due to receive £95,000 more income than we expected.
Yeah, I just think it's important that we look at those people, you know, that are having these services and not treat them as a cash cow. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. Sorry, was there someone here? Oh, right. I think it was Councillor Chapman first, please.
Karen, are there situations, not knowing a lot about market trading, are there situations where a storeholder may be registered for VAT, in which case he couldn't have a 10% discount, could he? He'd have to pay 20% and recover that from his own accounts?
Yeah. Any store market traders that are registered for VAT would be able to reclaim the extra VAT, but my understanding is that several are not. We've not delved into it in that level of detail. Well, I don't know if the events manager has. I've not had that conversation with him. But you're right, if they were registered for VAT, they would be able to reclaim that.
Could I just ask, just to expand on that a little bit, but surely if we've got market traders who are registered for VAT, we would have that information, so we'd be able to invoice accordingly.
We don't necessarily have that information. We have to invoice them from now on, including VAT, but we don't know necessarily whether they're VAT registered or not.
No, the onus is on us to charge them, and it's them to reclaim if that's applicable for those.
What I mean is, if we're doing what's effectively a 10% discount, if we're charging 10% instead of 20 as an increase, is that down as VAT, or is it down as a? I mean, we must have to demonstrate that we're putting the VAT amount on the invoice.
Yeah, and I imagine there's a sub-ledger as well that Karen will keep her VAT in as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karen.
Yes, so I'm trying to find the appendix that they're on. So store market rents are So store market rents are shown on Appendix 5. And if you look at the first one, the charge for a 9-foot stall, the existing charge, where we didn't charge VAT in the current year, was £26.30. So the proposed charge without VAT for 25-26 is recommended at £24.08. But when you add the 20% VAT on, it would be £28.90. So Councillor Chapman's right. If a stall market holder is registered for VAT, they can reclaim that 20%. So effectively, they'll have a lower charge going through their accounts if you ignore the VAT. But for the stall market holders that are not registered for VAT, they'll be paying £2.60 more.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Shelley, I think you had the question next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Karen. It's a very interesting report. I remember last year's one. In fact, it wasn't last year, so my memory is correct. It was a little bit more recent than that, which is why it's still quite fresh in my mind. And thank you for supplying those figures as well. I have a slight query about the bottom line figure there, because it looks like the budgeted income for this financial year is the same as next financial year. Now, I appreciate I only threw this question at you this afternoon, so it may be that, I haven't done the maths there, that isn't necessarily the case. The sort of the more detailed question behind that, I think if possible, and I'm not expecting it now, would be to know, how much we make once our own charges have been taken away, our own costs have been taken away. And that would then give members a better indication about whether or not some things are acting as, I wouldn't use the word cash cow. We're not a profit-making organisation. We're just looking at how we can reuse surpluses for public benefit. I think that's a kinder way of putting it, because we all know that local government isn't easy, and we do need to see, what the market will stand in terms of some of the services that we provide. So some of these are in isolation, we're the sole provider. In other cases, people could go elsewhere for things. So it's that degree of, I suppose, finesse and detail that it would be useful for us as members to have, perhaps in future, whether that's as a report at the next meeting or something intermediate. That would be helpful, I think. I've just got, a simple one that comes to mind for me. I'm interested that the dog control, by the way, we weren't making any income from that at all. I was going to query why that didn't go up. I now see why it's not going up, because we don't have any dogs to control, by the sound of it. But the one that interested me, I suppose, as much as anything else, is the Bakewell Agricultural Business Centre. And an obvious question to me there is, how are the bookings going for that? Because that would determine whether or not we were in a position or willing to put up the prices, I would have thought. And I know it says in paragraph 3.1 that service managers have taken into account these things. It's just that we're not quite seeing that as members, I don't think.
Right. First of all, apologies for the totalling error on the spreadsheet. I've just done those quickly. So the middle column for the forecast income for 25-26 should add up to 2,303,821. And the increase-decrease column adds up to £68,050. Because you only asked the question this afternoon, I didn't have a chance to bring in the figures to show effectively the forecast outturn for this year. We're still compiling the budget reports for 25-26, but probably in early January I could repeat this table and show you the projected income and expenditure for 25-26 so that you can see the difference. For some services, such as the Bakewell ABC, the income shown on here isn't the total income. So the Bakewell ABC figure is only for room hire. We also receive income from rents and from commission from the auctioneers. Similarly with planning, we obviously get income from the normal planning fees, if you want to call them that. That's not shown here because that's a statutory fee that's not set by this committee. Has that covered everything you asked?
Just one other follow-up, if I may, as well. I'm interested in the bulky household waste charges there. And again, only in the context that obviously what we're deciding here can have knock-on effects, can't it? It can have unforeseen effects. And so with that one, it would be interesting to know, for example, whether Derbyshire Dales is particularly facing an issue in terms of dumping of waste, because that could be a direct effect of us putting up the charges.
I haven't heard colleagues mention any particular issue with fly tipping. And I suppose bulky household is one of those fees that you mentioned that people can go elsewhere for that. Usually if you buy white goods, the retailer offers you a collection service.
Thank you. Good question, Councillor. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Any more questions from the floor at all? Thank you. No, it would be good to see it all in the context of a budget with the offsetting, so you can see the net effect, to be honest with you, Karen. I think that would sort of give an honest reflection then of the budget. Councillor Ripton.
Does that mean that we're not approving these charges now? We're going to get a chance to formally approve them once we understand the costs that sit behind them?
We are requesting you to approve them now, and we'll build them into the draft budget.
So I think just to build on Councillor Shelley's point, if really the question is not about whether we're charging X pence or Y pence, it's if we are underwater versus the cost, is that a good use of public money? And I guess we can't really answer that question unless we understand the costs of the service. So I'd be more comfortable if I understood how much the council actually spends getting these incomes.
If there are any particular services, I could look them up now, but I was only asked the question this afternoon, and I was in meetings all afternoon, so I didn't have time to actually produce it. Next year, I'll build it in as an appendix to the report.
Yeah, that's
so
fair
is
enough.
there a particular service you want me to look at?
I guess it's the ones where we have a choice, as distinct from the ones where we're told we have to offer the service and there's a fee for it. So I don't know, I'm not close enough to the detail, but if there are, I mean, we talked about waste. If it's a choice to offer a waste disposal service and there's a market alternative and or it costs us money, I guess that those are the ones I'm most interested in, if that helps.
Yeah. And I think for stuff like that, I think as well, not just here, but necessarily going to C&E. And I think through that method as well, through Ash and his team as well, I think because those are the people who pull those numbers together that then reflect back to Karen. I think that's a good spot to challenge through. Would that sound correct, Karen?
Yes, that would be the normal way, because those, although I've compiled the report, none of the fees are my services. They've all come from the managers across the council, using their knowledge of the service and whether they feel a charge is appropriate or not.
Councillor Bates.
You've offered some extra advice, Karen. Garden waste, it seems an awful lot. Can you just give us a bit more detail on this, please?
Detail about the proposed fee. So the waste team have recommended a £2 increase from £56 to £58, which works out to, I think, 3.58%. I think from what I recall they said, that compares reasonably favourably with other authorities that provide a garden waste service. But it's at the end of the day, it's up to you as members whether you want to accept that recommendation.
Yeah, I think there's two things as well there. There's also the cost of doing business for what service it is that you need to offset, which I think is what you're after, Councillor. But also the comparison, as Karen rightly put there, from other areas. So again, that would probably come from C&E, not necessarily through Karen as part and parcel of that. Correct me if I'm wrong again, Karen.
Well, we can find the cost of providing the service. I mean, I can probably look that up now, but if you want that for garden waste. But at the end of the day, all of this income, whether it makes a profit or not on the particular service, it all goes in to help the bottom line of the council, to help balance the budget. One of the things we could perhaps do next year is obviously collate a lot more information ready for when you make this decision, or you might even want to think about asking the scrutiny committee to look at it prior to it coming here next time. I do understand what you're asking me. It's just I've never been asked for that level of information in the past, so I wasn't prepared for it tonight.
So, can I just come back?
Councillor Bates, I think you had a follow-up, didn't you?
It's not all about making money, it's trying to encourage people to recycle. And we don't want to put a price on that's going to discourage people using it.
Agreed. But I think we've obviously seen the take-up, I think, which has exceeded our forecasting, I think, so far as well. I think so. Councillor Butcher, was it? Okay, thank you. Maybe, Karen, we ask just as an action for follow-up, could we just get that netting off, if that's okay? If we can't get it now, but it's circulated as an email afterwards, does that sound amenable to everyone? Because I think that's been the biggest query one here. Just so you're not having to rush it, Karen.
If you want, I can look now for garden waste if that's a particular concern for members.
I think if you go away, do the work, and then come back to us,
I'll
Karen.
do that.
Don't try and do it now. Okay, thank you. Councillor Buttle.
Karen, are any of these fees and charges for statutory required work, or is it all stuff that we provide as a service?
Do you mean whether we're obliged to provide a service?
Yes. Like, there's all sorts of services we're obliged to provide, and then we do a little bit more on top. And we provide a better service than is required. And I'm wondering if we, for example, end up facing cuts in funding, where we will be able to shuffle these funds around so we can protect our statutory services.
I think most of the statutory services, especially the more expensive ones, we don't or can't usually charge for. So household waste collection, the basic residual waste, we can't charge for that. We can charge for garden waste. We can't charge for food waste. The charge there for food waste is purely new food bins or additional food bins that people ask for. That's why the figure's so low for that. I think most of these charges on here are probably for discretionary services that we're not obliged to charge for. The only potential ones that may not be that, I think, are possibly licensing, where we were obliged to license taxis and so on, but we charge, generally we make the charges there, aim to recover the costs and not make a surplus on taxis.
So the only one that matters really from the statutory point of view is the licensing, taxes and gambling, and we're covering our own costs, and that's it.
I think, as I said, I think most of the other ones, I'd have to check with colleagues, but from my knowledge, most of the other ones are discretionary services. Public conveniences, we don't have to provide those if we don't want to, and we make a charge to help cover the costs.
I did wonder about cemeteries.
Well, I presume that we are required to provide cemeteries, so yeah, that might be a mixture, because I think some of the services within there, provision of memorial benches and plaques and so on, that's a discretionary element.
Gotcha, thanks. And I'm just generally nosy.
Councillor Buttle. Anybody else? Or Councillor Flitter?
Well, yeah, I tend to agree with the comments about the waste, the garden waste situation. But we had quite a lengthy debate on this some time ago, and I think it was about £60, which was a break-even point, and we fought to get it down to the low 50s. And I can't see that staying that way for much longer. We'll be getting up to £60 next year, I bet. But it is nice to note that, you know, people are on the uptake of this, and we are, providing a service which is the most important thing to local people. I think we were just getting a little bit into detail, and I want to bring it back to this as 3%, or take a penny or two if you're rounding up or rounding down. But right across the board, 3%, I don't think is an arguable figure to vote against that. I think it's very reasonable. And yes, we have to look at it now because we have to fit it within the process. But some will be a little bit higher, some will be a little bit lower. But if we do nothing, then the year after we're going to have to put it up double. And that's not as palatable to local people as what we do with 2 or 3%. So, I'm quite ready to move this report and the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Flitter. Do I have a seconder at all? Thank you, Councillor Shelley.
Yes, just to say that, I support the charges as they're put in front of us, with the caveat that next time they come around, perhaps we can have that little bit degree of extra detail. We're taking a great deal on trust, the knowledge of the service managers and their understanding of the conditions and the likely market for some of these services.
Thank you, Councillor Shelley. In that case, I'll put it to the vote then, please. Everyone for this report? Everyone against? Everyone abstain? Thank you. It's carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Karen. On to item number 11, Treasury Management Mid-Year Review for the financial year 24-25. Back to you again, Karen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hopefully this is a more straightforward report. So the CIPFA Code of Practice requires us to report on Treasury issues 3 times a year, at the beginning or before the start of the year to set a strategy, at the middle of the year to review how we're going partway through, and at the end of the year. So this is the mid-year review for 25-26. It looks at performance to the end of September, and I'm pleased to say that we've complied with all the items in our strategy, and I'm asking members to approve the 2 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Do I have any questions from the floor on this one? Or do I have a proposer? Councillor Shelley.
Yes, I'm happy to propose it. I'm not sure it's any more straightforward than the previous report, though.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Secretary. Thank you very much. Do I have everyone vote then, please? Everyone for this, please? Thank you very much. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 12, the Complaints Annual Report for 23-24. Thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. So as you'll see in front of you is the Complaints Annual Report for years 23-24. Please be mindful that the report covers formal complaints whereby the initial informal complaint resulted in either a dissatisfaction or was accelerated due to its nature. You will see that we received 51 complaints in total. 32 complaints were resolved at stage 1, which is a 63%. 11 complaints were resolved at stage 2, 21%, and 8 complaints were resolved at stage 3, 16%. This is an overall reduction in the previous year's number of complaints, which was 61, so there's an improvement there. But I'd also like you to note that the local government ombudsman undertook 1 detailed investigation for the local authority. This was not upheld, and in comparison with 63% of complaints within similar authorities that were upheld, I think we've done really well as a council. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions? Councillor Ripton.
Thank you. I work in financial services, so they have a very specific definition of complaints, but I don't know what the definition is here. So could you just tell me how we define a complaint in local government?
So, through you, Chair. Initially, an informal complaint would go to a service area. For an example, say a misbin. If that didn't get resolved or wasn't responded to in timely, a timely manner, it would then get referred to the formal complaint stage, and there's categories identified for each one. I'm not going to each one right at this stage, but they're identified on our website under complaints process. So that's how we categorise them.
So would a missed bin be a complaint, or would it just be an expression of some sort of service failing, but not a complaint about the service failing?
Potentially a missed bin would be an informal complaint classed as a service complaint, which will be dealt with by service areas.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a multitude and varieties of those across the council. The formal complaints, where we've not responded in a timely manner or dealt with it appropriately, or if there's something more serious, like a health and safety issue, would go straight away to a formal complaint, not a standard service complaint.
Got you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So the 51 is the formal complaint.
Yes, where we've not done our duty in responding to the informal complaint in time initially.
And there could be dozens, hundreds beneath that.
It's uncategorised because they're just a standard email. There's not a process for them. So people will just fire that across.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Hobson.
Caroline, when you said about responses in a timely manner, did you mean responses to the complaint?
No, to the service dispute. So if they were not responded to in a timely manner and the person chose to feel that they weren't dealt with in a timely manner, they could then put in a request for a formal complaint if they chose to.
Sorry, what do you call a timely response?
What that person would feel is a timely response. If they weren't satisfied with their response, whether it be timely within our, as it stands at the moment, our statutory 10-day turnaround, but it's the onus is on the individual to put in a formal complaint if they feel they aren't satisfied with their initial service dispute.
I think that's the point of this, sort of like people not knowing, and Ms Bidwell didn't actually explain, you know, like it's lots of corporations, they have sort of like they have to respond within so long and acknowledge a complaint. And the fact that if it's a service one, it's not a complaint, they have to say it's a formal complaint. I think there's a little bit of misapprehension on behalf of some of our users.
Okay, take that.
Councillor Shelley.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this, because obviously we consider key performance indicators in other circumstances, don't we? And I'd obviously hate for us not to be having some sort of measure of the number of missed bins, for example. We do have that kind of information, don't we?
Yes, we do. It's not dealt with under, obviously, the complaints procedure, but under separate KPIs, yes, it is reported on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Move up to recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fitter. Any have a seconder at all? Councillor Chapman, thank you very much. And then everyone for this, please. All those against? Or abstention? Thank you very much, Councillor. And that's carried. Thank you very much. Right, on to item number 13, response to government consultation on enabling remote attendance and proxy voting at local authority meetings to follow. Barbara, this is one for yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. It's a government consultation. All local authorities have been invited to respond to the consultation. There's a set of specific questions. I've included those as Appendix 1 to the report. And it's mainly on remote meetings, but it also touches on the possibility of proxy voting. Whether or not the council in effect responds, members can respond to it separately, and then it's a case of waiting and seeing what the outcome is with government. Because of the timescale for the response, the 19th of December, the report recommends that it's delegated to the leader, the response in consultation with the group leaders generally.
Thank you very much. Do I have anyone with questions? Councillor Shelley?
Are we going to get a chance to debate this, or because obviously we can make individual responses. So I haven't got questions as much. I've got more, I suppose, assertions. But
I don't think there's any reason why the meeting couldn't debate it. You know, the leader and the deputy leader and the leader of the opposition are here. They would hear the chat at the comments at the meeting.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think if you've got some debate points on this.
Okay, well, if now is the time, I mean, my point about this is obviously with things like emergencies such as COVID aside, this is quite a dramatic break with procedure for an organisation like ourselves. Personally, I would have concerns about formalising it as a matter of course, simply because I think the physical interaction that we have, if that's the right word, within these meetings is very important. And the number of occasions that I've been in fairly important discussions online where you're not able to read what the mood of the meeting is, and other people, simply because you cannot see everybody at once, I think would put members who weren't present at a disadvantage. So I think that's a very, very important point, which isn't really captured in the sort of the tick box comments down one side. I don't think that nuance there.
We can put in the consultation response the visibility for free text. I think my take on it from in previous life would be that the IT, I'm not saying it's insurmountable, but there is a higher need for IT once you go to remote meetings, particularly with officer time, because somebody would not only take note of the meeting, they would need people to bring them in, take them out of the meeting and so on. And also, I think, I'm not sure, my personal take would be it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think there is some mileage in full council meetings, for instance. I'm not, I've heard what Councillor Shelley says. Being in person, I think the interaction could be lost. And possibly certain meetings, such as decision-making meetings, where decisions are possibly more susceptible to challenge, like planning committees, there's possibly an argument for them to be in the meeting, then there's no argument about whether somebody was there for the whole debate, whether other people influenced what was going on in their private room, how they voted or contributed to the meeting. There's all sorts of, from a lawyer's point of view, having been involved in litigation all my life, I can see a lot of potential areas of challenge, in that regard. But I think, having said that, there is some scope, personally, I think, for some meetings to be remote and possibly some not.
Of course, we already hold many meetings remotely. They're just not decision-making ones usually. I get the other side of the coin, the idea that we do need to encourage diversity and opportunity for people who aren't necessarily able to get to meetings on a regular basis in quite the same way. I mean, I think probably most of us regard it as, if you like, part of our civic duty, if that's not too high-minded a phrase, to trek over here to these meetings. And I, personally, I get a lot more out of them by seeing you guys here than I would do ever on screen. So that's my personal belief. But as I say, I think it is founded on that sense that there simply is a higher quality of understanding and debate and interaction from that first person contact.
Thank you, Councillor Shelley. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Barbara, but this is about agreeing the principle, not necessarily the details of what that would look like, if that makes sense, that we'd be open to that principle.
I think so. I think we could include, some headline comments in the free text. I know, about 10 or 12 years before COVID, government was looking at this possibility at the time, and they were looking at what type of meetings it might apply to. So they were not, when they were looking at it then, I mean, they hadn't got the IT we've got now, but they were quite conscious that a one size might not fit all. So, I think it's more about the principle with some headline comments at this stage.
Thank you, Barbara. Councillor Hobson.
I think it isn't a one-size-fits-all, and I agree with what Barbara said and also Roger. Having said that, we're probably all people of an age who haven't got little children at home and or other things. And, you know, the diversity of the council, is not very diverse, I would say. So to encourage younger people or even older people, disabled people, or from a green agenda, not having all that mileage and having all those cars on the road, I think it's not a one-size-fits-all, but, I mean, we have got in here, I remember coming to a meeting in here, we've got all where everybody's on there, and I think technology is coming on leaps and bounds. And I think, well, I would hope that people weren't in their front rooms being coerced into voting in a particular way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ripton.
Yeah, just to build on what Councillor Hobson said, I mean, I spend my entire life on Zoom dealing with some of the biggest companies in the country, and we have some of the most diverse groups of employees and networks because we are remote. So I guess to your point about this being about principles, if we are going to vest this sort of power in the leaders, I'd ask that rather than them taking a sort of binary yes or no, the question we actually want them to answer is, what do we need to do to make this work so we can attract a more diverse and representative set of councillors in future?
No, I think inclusivity is a very positive thing. Thank you, Councillor Shelley. Any other questions from anyone else? Or debate points, really. Apologies. Councillor Buttle, you seem poised.
Yes, I'd really like it not to be about saving money. I'd like it to be about the actual things that we want out of it. Diversity and, like saving on diesel are great and they're really good things, but we've really got to have good relationships amongst people. And yeah, I believe that it is really nice to see you all here in flesh. And so, yeah, it needs a nuanced response, and it's not about saving 50 quid here, there or anywhere, from my point of view. But, I think that's probably pretty normal.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more, or do I have any proposers at all? Thank you, Councillor Ripton, for the proposal. Do I have a seconder at all? Thank you, Councillor Crenshaw. And then I can put it to the vote, please. Everyone for this? Thank you very much. Everyone against? And everyone abstention, please. Thank you, Councillor. That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much. There we go. All before 7 o'clock. There we go. A prompt meeting for you all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think that's everything. Is there anything?